Hello and welcome back to another episode of Combustion RC. On this week's episode, we're going to continue on the S35-4 EVO Nitro Pro Buggy. We have the front and rear end done, the center diff done, and today we're going to get onto the bell crank, and we're going to get into bag E3, which is a whole bunch of other goodies. We're going to see if we can get all the way to bag F, I think it is, where the chassis comes into play. Anyway, we're going to try to get these things on the chassis because I want that to be off the shelf and parts to start to connect. This is a big bag, though. This might take a while. So let's go ahead and get into it. Short introduction. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check out our Super Chats and memberships and also our Facebook group, Combustion RC Fans and Racers Forum, where you can post your rides, race results, your setup sheets, and anything else you may want to share. Just remember to keep it family friendly. Let's get into today's build. All right, so before we get into bag E2 here, which you're going to go ahead and cut open, get everything ready, don't forget to caffeinate and hydrate. All right, so here's our bell crank assembly. As you can tell, we have a really nice bell crank, just like we had on the four-wheel drive with the nice arrow pointing and laser etching here. I love the way they do their bell cranks. These are awesome. We got a nice big aluminum piece here. One thing I really like that I noticed on this is actually a clamping collar. And so it's not just held on by a rubber O-ring and then the pressure keeping it, in there. It's actually got a clamp on it, which I like better because the rubber O-ring heats up under tension and then it sticks and you can't hardly adjust your turbo saver tension. And these springs push on there so tight anyway that it makes it nearly impossible to do so. One thing that they do give you is they give you this foam right here, which if you pop the middle of it out, as you can see, it looks like it would fit over top. Sometimes you'll see people that put these inside of their spring. I don't ever run these. We're going to go ahead and put this together here. They do tell you can still put thread lock on here. I would not put thread lock on here myself personally, especially since it's clamping. We're going to go ahead and put this screw on here though. It's a 105018. It's our tiny cap head screw. Let's go ahead and put this in here and get this ready to rock. And that looks like it's probably a 1.5. It is. Let's go ahead and get that ready. So just put it in, just make sure it's not tight so that has a little bit of room to move as we're threading it on. Let's see here, we're going to need, these flanged bearings are going to go on your rack itself, and these bearings here are going to go in your posts. So if you want to, you can go ahead and put these in your plastic post. I think that they should fit in tight enough they don't fall out on the plastic one. Yeah, they do. Perfect. So it does not show one on the bottom in this picture, but it does in the next picture. So go ahead and just put both of them on there so that they're set. That way you don't have to worry about that. Post is going to go into this one. This curve up right here is the upside. So then you take your post and you're going to put it up through the middle, just like so. And that one is all set because once it goes on the car, it will actually be connected on here, and that will what pinches and holds it together. Why we're not putting it on the chassis of the car first, I don't understand, but we'll get to that. We can go ahead and take these shoulder screws and get them ready for this rack so they're done and out of the way. And you can see it's got this big shaft that's not threaded right here. That's why it's called a shoulder screw. So your smaller washers are going to go up on top of this, just like so. And that's going to be ready to go through your bell crank. So once we get the servo saver portion done, the actual rack is going to have this. And then these are going to go flange side on the bottom and on the top. It's going to be doubled up because the 8 scales usually double up the bearings because they're so much heavier. Let's do our servo saver side now that we've got that kind of out of the way. So the first thing we're going to want to do is turn this with the threaded side facing down. All right, so the plastic side of your servo saver is going to go upside down. This is actually going to go through it, it looks like, and sit just like that. Okay, and then we have a bearing that goes inside of here. And then it shows this being under here like so. Okay, so we're like this now. This says to put a little bit of grease on the top of this. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's put a little touch of grease on the top of that there. And we'll use the go ahead and use the black grease here. Never actually put grease on this before on a kit, but that's not a bad idea. Just a little dabadoo-ya, a little dollop. Just not daisy, so don't eat it. Now we'll slide that up on there, like so. And it should have this kind of shape to where it can do its function, which is this right here. Okay, That is what a servo saver does. It saves the servo by absorbing some of the impact. So you can see that rotates a little bit separately, but keeps a hold of it. The spring is going to go on, this goes in first, so our shim is going to drop down on there, and then the spring. It's going to allow it to move a little bit on there without grabbing the aluminum. And then if you notice, it's a really tight squeeze. Your flared up side is going to face up, and you're going to have to push pretty hard to get that started. Once it's started, you're just going to have to hang on to it pretty tightly and crank her down. This is when I do say I do like the way Associated makes theirs, or Techno I should say, made theirs the shape of a wheel wrench. So you can put your 17 mil wheel wrench on there. All right, we're gonna go just a couple threads up from the bottom so it has that gap, and then just tighten your set screw down. It's not really gonna move because of how tight it is, but I'd rather have it there just in case. All right, so we got our bearing on top and then our bearing on the bottom, okay? And then our post. Now that is all set. And our rack, got our shoulder screws, a bearing with the flange side facing the screw top. That's going to go down through the top of the rack. Okay. Just like so. Do that. And then our nut goes in the bottom of this. Like that. This is where you're going to need your 2mm wrench. You have another bearing on the bottom side here. And these are going to want to try to fall out, so you're going to have to do the old finger hold. Make sure your arrow faces forward because that's facing the front of the vehicle. Okay. And then that little channel that's set in there is for that rack to actually sit against, it looks like, at full lock. Yep. Cool. So now, I'm going to grab our other one with our bearing, put that through there, and then slide our bearing to the top. And this is going to go on here like so. Make sure you're on the same side. Push through and then grab that nut. Oh, helps if you put the nut on there too. If it's just a little bit too tight for your taste, just back that screw out just a tiniest little bit, and then it should be nice and free, which it is now. See? And no, I'm not sponsored by J Concepts, by the way. This is just a t-shirt that I had. Now, if you're tired of these backing out and falling out, you're in luck because we're about to make that stop. You're going to bring your front end over with paper towel so that it doesn't leak grease everywhere. We're going to slide that up on our paper towel. All right, and that rack is going to tuck up underneath of there like so. All right, let's turn these up so you can see. See our racks up underneath there. And then these screws are going to, now we may have to take this off of here and put it on the chassis once we get to the chassis, but at least this for now is going to be in here. Now normally I would put thread lock in here. I'm not going to yet, just in case I need to take these back off, because I don't want these to be thread locked in if I'm just going to be taking them back off. Because usually you put this on the chassis first, since the bottom of it is keyed to the chassis. And if you're not certain what I mean by it's keyed to the chassis, I'll show you here in just a second. It's the reason you can tighten these like this. So these flat spots right here are what's called keying. So these keys, and then they lock into these spots right here in the chassis that are about 1mm deep, and that is where they sit. And then the screws go through the bottom here to hold that on. Now, I may have to take this off of here and actually get it to set in there, but for now, we're going to try to set these as straight as possible since those are straight. And when we put that on there, hopefully they don't move around too much, and we can just drop it on. So now that we've got that done, we can move on to the next page. The next page is when we're going to start opening bag E3. So bag E3 is another giant bag full of parts. So go ahead and pause the video now, get everything sorted out, and then we'll get going with this one as soon as you get it done sorted. You can just go ahead and hit the play, and we'll get back going in 3, 2, 1. All right, so we've got bag E3 all laid out and sorted out here. Now, one thing that you will need is you'll need to grab you a set of Allen drivers, because the one thing this kit doesn't have or tell you that you need is this guy right here, which is a 5mm Allen, and this is for your pivot ball inserts. See that right there? You need that to go in there to be able to put these in. So if you don't have a 5mm Allen, you are not going to be able to get the, or hex wrench, if you want to call it a hex wrench, but you'll need a 5mm in order to get those in. That is going to be in our first step. So you're going to need that. Bag E, step 1, you've got your right and your left. Then we're going to need, the right side gets clockwise and the left side gets counterclockwise. So we have two different threads here. So that is clockwise. No, this is counterclockwise. So we got counterclockwise here, which goes on the left. So counterclockwise goes to the left. Clockwise goes to the right. There's not really a way to tell them apart other than the trick of put your nail in the groove and twist it and see if it goes in or out. If it turns right and it goes in, you're clockwise. If you turn right and it goes in, clockwise. So on this one, does the opposite. If you turn right and it goes out, it's counterclockwise. Thread coarseness is the same. There's nothing different with the balls themselves. As you can see, they look identical. So just remember, you're going to have to check that. Oh, there is a difference. Okay. Look at the spot right here. There is a cut line on the one that's counterclockwise, and it's solid on the one that's clockwise. So good to know. Very good to know. That being said, we got to figure out how to get these in. I think I might have to do this the old... Oh, no, that's right. These have this guy in the end here, which is a 3mm in the end, if I remember right, or 2.5. Yes, 2.5 in the middle. So you're going to need those on each side, and then you need these guys here, which are your cushions. That's what these plastic parts here are called, cushions. And then you need the inserts that hold them in. And this is where that large 5mm hex wrench comes in at, because that's what holds these in, or puts them in. These are going to go in from this side, and make sure your right is on your right and your left is on your left. So right looks like this. Okay. Oh yes, and then our carbon plates. Almost forgot our carbon steering plates. So carbon steering plates and 2 3x10s on each side. So 2 3x10 button heads on each side. So we can go ahead and put our carbon steering plates on first, actually. Our right one, which is going to look like this, right? Yes. And then this guy goes down on here. Okay. I'm just doing this because I'm going to put the 2.5 on here for the pivot balls once we get to that point. I think that's... No, that's not next. Okay. Once we get there. But first we're going to get these in. Kind of hold it loose so it doesn't snap your fingers if you're using a wrench like this. Or a driver, I mean. And yes, I know I just accidentally tightened that too much on carbon fiber. It's okay. This will only go one way, but it needs to go on the right side. Now we need to go ahead and do this part. So we're going to grab this, do our right one first. Now we're going to drop the ball in. Put our pivot cushion on there. And then, so drop that in. Dish side facing down. It says make it tight enough that it holds tight, but loose enough that it flops. So that's what we did there. These are all 4 the same, so this part's going to be easy. You just grab 2 of them. All 4 are 92.5mm. You're going to need 4 of the 8 bearings that are, again, all the same. They are all 8x16s. Then you need 2 of these big set screws. Okay. You're going to need 2 of these really awesome looking hexes. I believe the big set screws are going to go in the end of this. Yes. And that's what's going to hold your pin. You're going to need 2 pins, 2 shims. Should have 4 of these. Yes. We're going to set them on top of there so they're easy to pick up. Is there anything else that we need? Thread lock. Okay. Thread lock, and then a 2.5mm driver for this guy right here, which is also what's going to get the thread locks, to go ahead and put that on there. Right. For this, go ahead and grab one of your outputs, doesn't matter which one. Grab a bearing, you put the bearing on the inside here, just like so. Grab your axle, shove it through, right? Then you're gonna have a shim that goes down like that, and then your other bearing. And then your hex is going to go on there. I'm going to shove the pin through the middle of it. Okay. And then this is going to go right down the middle and on that pin. Now, if you're like, how am I supposed to keep that from spinning to get that in there? It keeps spinning on me. I can't get it in there. I don't know why it's doing that. How do I make sure I get it tight? Because all I can do is snug it up and it just spins in my hand. This is when it's handy to have your 17mm wrench available, because most 17mm wrenches, such as the Sticky Kicks one, the AKA ones, the Techno ones, they all have a hole in the top. So you put this right down on your hex, put the screwdriver down the middle of it, put it on your set screw, and then you can snug it. Ta-da! Easy as that. There's those done. I think that's all we're going to need of thread lock at the moment. So we'll put this over here. And there's our front drive axles ready to go on the arms. Now we need to go to the next page. Looks like that's what we're actually going to do next, is put them on the arms. I figured we'd actually build the rears first and then put them all on together the way this thing has been doing everything. All right, so bring your front end over. Switch out your bit to your 2.5. I'm actually going to use my old nitride ones, or titanium coated ones, because they're longer. It's literally the only reason I'm going to use these. But then also, after the 2 broke earlier, I'm afraid of breaking the 2.5. Just kind of, you know. On the lower, we're going to have these countersunk washers, but not on the upper. So am I putting that countersunk washer on countersunk out? I am. Okay then. All right, so this one is the right. So that's that side. I've got the right side facing me actually. So yes, this is what I need. All right, so right side, and we're going to go ahead and get the top one in. So have that pivot ball facing straight. Get your driver in there. Okay. Oh, geez. How tight is that? Let's try the old hand wrench out. Oh, goodness gracious. This doesn't have enough ugga-duggas. Sometimes you have to get out the extra ugga-duggas. In my case, it's the Ryobi flavor. It works. They're cheap. The battery tabs are garbage, which is why it's got tape holding the battery on, but it works. So we've got this guy here that goes on with this flavor. Going to try to get this driver in. I probably should have done the bottom first, because, you know, I'm just trying to do too much here. Well, why can't I seem to get... These do go in here, right? Yeah, it says they do. Look at that. No uggas and no duggas. Or went right in. I will say caster blocks are much easier in this regard. Okie dokie. I think we're good with this guy now. I think we can put him up. And go back to our little guy. Little guy. Now we're going to move on to the rear end. So you can move this to the side. Again. All right. Now we're going to grab our rear hubs. Those funny looking pills that we had last week. We've got the stair step up is the outside. Okay. So that's the outside. Where it steps up is the outside. And then, let me see if I can. There we go. The step up is the outside and the step down is the inside. These pills are going to go in with the top right corner being in the top right corner. So that's this one here that's all the way up. They went on the outside top corner. These are held on by 3x25s. Is that our longest ones or our next ones down? These look more like 20s. Let's see, 16s. Okay, so yeah, the longest ones are what we need here. So you need 4 of your longest screws. All right, and I think these are just going to slide through. Yeah, those just slide through. And then 4 of our nuts. You're going to need a 5.5 driver and a 2mm hand wrench with one on each side. I don't know why I'm trying to do this while still holding the tools in my hands. Like if I just set this down, it'd be so much easier. Sometimes I dance to the beat of a different drummer. So what do you guys do? What do you guys do for your other hobbies outside of RC? Any musicians out there? I am a musician myself. Is there any hobbies that you would like to do that you've never done that you've always thought would be interesting? I can say I've got lots of those. Go ahead and bring this over here. Where'd our 2.5 driver go? Like last time, doing axles, 2 drive pins, 2 set screws, your hexes, 17mm wrench. I'm assuming, yep, 2 shims, and 4 bearings. All right, so helps you put the bearing in first, silly. There we go. Here's the bearing in. Shim. Yes, I pinched my thumb. Yes, it hurt. Yes, I don't want to do it again. One done, one to go. Now, the good thing is we have a front bumper that was in this bag, and usually a front bumper means we're mounting to the chassis soon. Usually. Does it mean that this time? I don't know. Probably not. We'll find out, I guess, won't we? And next page, we're going to go ahead and get these on the rear end, it looks like, and then we're going to get our turnbuckles made that are going to hold the rear end together, I'm assuming. We need our 2 pins and 2 more nuts. Do we need anything else? Our clips. So we're going to use clips. Looks like a thin one in the rear and a thick and a thin in the front. Which, with those being clips, we can put them on after the fact. And we're going to use our outer upper hole. So the back of the car is facing us, just like it is in theirs. So we can put this in here. They have the nut side facing forward, so let's do that. So they got the nut side of this facing forward. All right, now this is when it's handy to have 2 5.5mm wrenches because we're going to need it. So if you only have one 5.5mm wrench, you can use one of the little wrenches that comes with most kits, has a 5.5 on there. Otherwise, we're just going to do this. We're going to go ahead and get our nut on this end, like so. We're going to get it started by our fingers. Then we're going to grab our 5.5 and our 5.5. And you're just going to hold the one side and then screw on the nut. Okay? Just like that. All right, so there's that. Now it says to put a thick washer on the rear, or a thick clip on the rear on each side, and a thin one in the front, and then slide it to the back, and we'll put our thinner one in the front. Is it a thin, or is it kind of a medium thin? It looks like it's a medium thin. Doesn't look like it's a thin. Or are they all the same aside from those super thick ones? I'm assuming there's going to be a little bit of slop. Usually on 8 scales there's a tiny bit of slop. Ow! That one didn't get trimmed very well. See, because I don't know if there's enough room for another thin one in there. We can try. Oh, it did fit. Alright, so we could technically get away with 2 thick ones in the back then, because I think the thick one is the same. Yeah, it is. So thin in the front, and then you can either do 2 thick ones in the rear or a thick one and 2 thin ones. Being as though it's the same size to do 2 thick ones, I'm going to do 2 thick ones, which means on the other side, I'm actually going to pull these out. Those are done. Now we have our turnbuckles. Our turnbuckles for this are these 2 giant turnbuckles here, which I do not have a wrench for, I don't believe. And these guys here, and we need 1 on each side. I'm going to look and see if I have a bigger turnbuckle wrench. Otherwise, I'm going to have to use my shock pliers and All right, so I did find my Kyosho one that came with my ready to run Mad Van. It is a 5.5, fits in there. So I have a 5 on the tip of my shock plier wrench here. So I'm going to try both and see which one works better. Since these are these ginormo dudes, I know this isn't going to be fun. And yeah, I know this is going to be fun. It'd be awesome, since this is a 5.5, if it would be able to slide down in here and actually hit the... No. I know it's not going to help with both sides, but that will let us get one side started so much easier. Okay, and it wants us to put the footed one on the straight side, and then the normal pivot ball on the curvy side. And we are going to go to inside hole and then into the second to outside hole. So you're going to use the socket head screws for the inside, 2 of the 3x25s for the outside with 2 nuts. And then you need to get those gray shanks out that were in the very first bag. Or the bag with the pills, I mean. There's these little gray shanks. These guys right here, you need one of those on each side. It needs to set with the hex side facing out so that you can put a, I'm guessing a 7 mil on there. Yep, that's a 7 mil. And then on the inside is going to be your actual wrench side, which is a, looks like a 2.5. All right, so you want to make sure that these are ready to go in. So you're going to use your 2.5, middle hole on the inside. Said middle hole on the inside, or third one down. You didn't see it because I edited it out, but I almost put these on the wrong side because I was just sticking them on there and not paying attention to the fact that the yoke is supposed to face that way. Amateur move. And you guys are learning from me. Oh my goodness. And the outside is going to be 2 mil and a 5.5 nut driver. We're just using all the wrenches on this one. And then this is going to be your second to outside hole. All right, so these are going to be leaning out, so we're going to have to make some adjustments here, but that's fine. At least we can get them in with the standoff in the back. There's that, and we are like, so these need to go way in. I'm guessing that we probably needed to do the 16 millimeter just by the way that it looks. All right, now that we've taken all the threads away and brought this down to 11 millimeter, we are about where we need to be. And that's with it all the way in here and all the way out here. And it's because we used a long here. And I'm guessing we were supposed to use the short. Did I put the wrong? Yep. No. If you're using the long arm, you make it very short. So if we need to shorten the link, we're going to have to literally put the shorter rods on because we can't make it any shorter. 4 of the 3x16, so that's our only long screws that are left. And then 2 points, so our little tiny countersunk guys here. All right. So this is the last step of the process here. So we're going to make the yoke face the left. We're going to grab these 2 guys over here that are going to have nuts in them. So these do pressure fit into here, so they won't fall out once they're in, if you can get them in. So let's grab this and our 2 mil. Make this a lot faster. And our wing mount. Grab one of your long guys here. It's going to go through the back of the wing mount. They want this on the 3rd hole down. The nub faces the bottom. Then you're going to need your short little guys here. These are still 2 millimeter. And then your nuts are actually going to slide in the outside. There's a little slot right underneath where that wing goes. And so that's like for your wing button. And so that's going to slide right in there. And right onto the floor. All right, so then use your 1/5 to kind of guide that into the line where it needs to be at. That's what I usually do on these just because these are kind of a bear to get directly centered. There is different degrees of angle for the wing. I'm going to go ahead and put the 2-degree ones on and not the flats. So more downforce. And just like so, that goes there. And so your wing button actually screws in the front hole, this where that nut is at, and then this little 2.5 is what holds on your downforce adjustment. Tomorrow, we'll finally get into bag F, which means we'll get the center diff mounted, as well as the brake pads and rotors. And we'll get all this onto the chassis finally on step... What step are we looking at before we get the chassis out? Step 30. It's about time, right? It's the next night, and we have a lot to do. So, you know, we made it through our E-Series bags, and, well, that took a lot out of us. So, we're going to caffeinate and hydrate. We're going to get into bag F, which is our chassis and all this stuff. We might even get into bag I. But before I, what do we need? H. What comes after I? J. We're going to try to get into all of them. Think we can get into them? I don't know. Well, let's fuel up. We're going to go ahead and get in our bag F, get it all sorted out, and then by the time you see me again, you'll be tipped down and see me out of this camera. So let's go ahead and get on to the next step of this in 3, 2, 1. All right, so now I've got everything laid out and measured out. The very first things we're going to need are our 4 shoulder screws right here, which are the ones that have the shank on the top with no thread. So you're going to need all 4 of those. You're going to need this carbon fiber plate right here. You're going to need both of your bearings. You're going to need both of these bars. 2 set screws, 4 3x8 countersunks. The top portion, which is this guy here, with the bearing portion for your center shaft facing down of each of these. Our standoff posts, which these are actually steel. Our brake shoes, brake pads, I should say. So if you've ever worked on a real car, you know what a brake pad looks like. Well, this is exactly the same thing. So as you can tell, it looks just like it has the regular backing. And then it has the semi-metallic brake pad on the inside. And these do run on rotors, which are essentially tiny rotors that are even slotted. So pretty cool deal when you start looking at how nitro cars are made. And these are semi-metallic. They don't have that bitter smell, so I don't think that they're ceramic. But usually ceramics have kind of a bitter smell to them. If you know what I'm talking about, that smell, it smells like cat pee. Oh yes, you're going to need your 4 tiny little springs too. Okay, and don't lose these. They're very light, very easy to lose, very small. First thing we're going to do is we're going to need 2 brake pads, 2 shoulder screws, 1 of these guys, okay? These shoulder screws are 2 mils, so you're going to need your 2 millimeter wrench, hand wrench, not ugga-dugga. And we are going to look and see which side's the outside. So the outside, if you're looking at it from the top, you can see that there is like an angle in. You want the outside to be this side, okay? This is the outside. The angle in goes to the inside. Gonna grab your screw, brake, spring, brake. Okay? You're gonna hold that together, and you're gonna screw it into place. All right, I'm gonna check and see if we're all the way on. It looks like we are all the way down. Is that tightening in? Yeah, well, you can tighten and loosen these a little bit. We're going to loosen that just a little bit more. I don't want to compress that spring any right now. Now we're going to have this big guy here. There's a hole down there that it looks like this is going to go into with the set screw. The set screw is going to post on the bottom side. The shorter post is going to go in the front. The longer post with a hole in the top of it is going to go on the rear. I guess they both have a hole in the top, but the shorter post in the front, the longer posted one on the rear. And then this is going to face, peg down the left side, so side facing us. Okay, like so. And this side is going to be the same way, but with that over like that. Okay. And then this, make sure your countersunks are facing up. And that's going to line up with those bearings being in those larger holes. And these bearings slide down over top. All right, so what you can't tell by the picture is that needs to go through this one first. And then your set screw goes in there. All right, and since these are going into nylon, we'll just give them the ugga-dugs. Just don't ugga-dugs on your carbon fiber. Just remember that. You can give it the ugga-dugs down, just not tight. Just be careful not to squeeze these too much. Those are light springs, like I've said, so you don't want to over-tighten those. All right, and then our last set screw. It doesn't say how far, but it looks like it's just barely through. Looks like about that far. Looks like it's about even with the edge of the carbon fiber. And so what these do is they actually move that piece down there. So I don't know if you can see down in there now, but there's that piece down in there that had the flat spot, and when you turn it, it's going to squeeze our, see, it squeezes our brake pad. Same with this one. Turn it, it squeezes the brake pad. It doesn't look like it's squeezing that much, but once we get the rotor in there, it'll actually squeeze quite a bit. And then you can tighten these in and out, and that's how you adjust. All right, so they're having us put this whole thing together first before we put it in the car, which I find a little bit odd, but okay. It's their kit, it's not mine. Looks like the flat side is going to face out, and then the beveled side is going to be on the inside. These pieces are going to go on the bottom side. They are a snug fit. And what screw is going to go in the bottom of these? Two 3x6s. So that's this whole pile we've got of all these little bitty guys. These are 3x6s. So let's go ahead and put these in first to hold our footers. And then we also need our 4 3x25. So these are going to go in the top side through the top and hold these on. And you're going to need your brake rotors, which are these nice slotted rotors here, and your center diff. All right. If you notice the way these are made, these actually key onto here. Very flush fit. Okay. It is almost exactly. So there's like no wiggle wobble in there hardly at all. It is going to set in like so. If this was on the car, it'd probably be easier because it wouldn't be trying to walk away from you. There we go. We got it in. That's a miracle. Not really. All right. Are we going to get on the chassis yet? I want to put something on the, oh yeah, the chassis. Okay, finally. We're not getting this on the chassis, even though it should be right on there, but we're not doing that yet apparently. It's going to go to the side again. So here's this awesome honeycomb chassis we got. We're going to do our side rails first. This is going to be 10 3x6s, okay? 10. Brendan Georges, you subscribed to the channel while I'm recording this, so shout out to you because you're the first person I've had that's actually subscribed while I'm recording. So that's cool. We're going to go ahead and get on here. The side with the 4 dots goes on the right side. The side without the 4 dots goes on the left side, okay? And these are going to run in the top side all the way down the chassis. So the chassis is threaded, which means no ugga-dugga. Every one of these is going to be hand tightened. Okay? It also means we don't need to hold our chassis up in the air, which means it's going to be a little bit easier. We can just set these down on here. Okay, so the underneath one up here is going to be through the bottom and into that plastic. Otherwise, I'm just putting my middle one on first because that's the one I chose to do first. No particular reason. Other than the fact that the middle one might help it to move less than putting a front or rear one on, which could allow it to swing. The middle one, because it's channeled, it won't allow it to swing as easy. This front end, the bell crank is keyed. You have to be vigilant to make sure that these are perfectly straight, forward and backward, okay? You want those to be straight. Because when these drop in, they're going to sit in these keys. And that is going to be what holds those in place. Are held on with 3x10s, I do believe. Yes, 3x10s. So we're going to put those in first. That's 2 of our smallest ones here. Bell crank screw, 010. No, 4x10s. I do apologize. That's 4x10s. 3x10s go into our B block. And if you want to feel a little more secure, you can always put a little drop of thread lock on these. I would recommend it. I just didn't get it out, and I already started them, so we're just going to keep an eye on them and hope that they don't back out. And if they do, I'll put thread lock on them. All right, now that we've got that done, we can go ahead and get our 4 M4x16. So that's our big guys here. These are going to go in our front diff, and we also need to have our front bumper, which is over here to the side. And that is also going to slide up and over like so. I do believe it goes over top. Yes. Yeah, so this here goes in our slot in the front bumper, and that slides up over top. Okay, just like that. And these are going to go down in here, there, and there. All right. Go ahead and switch this out for the 2.5 on your drill or your hand tools to a 2.5. All right, so there's that end. Now we're going on to our rear end, which is going to be this long guy and a nut for our rear mount here. And then these 2 3 mils, and then these are for the actual rear end. All right, so let's go ahead and put this on first. On the lower side, you should have all of your flues. You should have all of your flues square, all of your screws flush, and then this little nub should be flush as well. And that's how you know that that's in good. All right, so we're gonna flip back over, and then we use our hand wrenches here. So we've got a 2 mil on this side, right? It's going through your side. Yep, so through your side with the 2 mil. On that 3x20 screw. And then the nut goes on this side. All right, so now that we've got this done, it's time to move on to bag G. So go ahead and pause the video, and we'll get this one lined out. I think we're on bag G. I haven't flipped my page yet. Yes, bag G. So now we're going to work on the electronics tray. Now, I don't have any servos for this yet. I'm going to be ordering servos for this anytime soon. It's going to be about another month before I get the electronics for this. But I wanted to go ahead and get this portion going. By the time you see this video, I'll be very close to having the electronics, as I think this one's going to come out probably the 3rd week of February. And I should be about 2 weeks away from actually being able to order those things. So soon, this will be ready to rock. I'm hoping to have it ready to race by March. So go ahead and grab bag G, pause the video, and we will get back into this one in 3, 2, 1. All right, so we got all that open. We've got our stuff sorted out here. This bag's going to go pretty quick because we don't have our servos, power switch, or the receiver. Well, we have a receiver to put in this. I'm just not going to do it yet. Here's our tray, and here is our caps. We do have the SWORKz stamped with both logos, caps. You can get part number 210088, which replaces these with carbon fiber plates. That are the nice graphite, like everything else, that nice heavy weave flat graphite carbon. And those would go on here. So everything else is the same. It just replaces those plastic caps with carbon ones if you want to do the cool carbon look. So more for aesthetics than anything. It is going to cause it to be a little bit stiffer than the plastic will. It won't cause these to really flex as much, but at the same time, it's still more so for aesthetics. Now, it is a really cool aesthetic that I definitely think looks awesome, but it's not necessarily necessary. So we are going to be going into each of these is a 3x16. So like this, and like this. And then not going into each of those is a 3x12. So it's generally 2 of these and 2 of these, and that's going to be your servo screws. So if you have your servos, this is how the screws are going to go in. If you don't have your servos, we're just going to park them in a couple threads. Okay? So they're going to be solid on one side, and on the other side where your 16s go in, you're going to have this little block. And that's going to go underneath here. Okay, your screws are going to go through and into this little block. What's cool about this is this whole unit can be removed in and out. So if you don't know, nitro cars do require washing and scheduled maintenance. So when you're doing that, you have to remove all your electronics. Well, what do you do to remove your electronics if all your electronics are all screwed to different parts of the chassis? They don't really come out. That's where this comes in place. This comes in play. It has multiple different screw locations here. You just take those out, and then your whole electronics tray, your switch, your receiver, your transponder, everything just right out of there. And then all you have left is your motor and your car, which can just be, you can even power wash them. I've seen guys at the track power washing their car, especially on a muddy track. If you get a nice rainstorm before your races are up, and then the sawdust game. If you know, you know. All right, and then those go on the chassis with our 3x8 countersunks. So we're going to go ahead and slide this over. Slide this over. Yes, we are getting to turnbuckles in just a moment. Oh, the joy. We'll bring our chassis back over. And this time they're going to face this way. And what are these for? Screws for? Or for, they're just Is that just to mark what the right side is? Because there's nothing that screws onto those? I don't know. Just seems a little odd that they would be there, but, you know, I mean, stranger things have happened, I guess, maybe. Because, see, these go over here. Oh, those are just feet for that to rest on. Okay, I see. All right, then this. I'm sorry if I'm hitting the mic with this. We're going to need all the last of these countersunks, okay? You're going to use your whole body to hold your car up. If you're doing this by hand, that's going to be a real trip. That's why having a screw gun is handy. Get it? Handy. Okay. Strange. So these do need a little bit of pressure to line that up. At least on mine it does. Yours it might not. This one it does. Huh. I wonder what that is, because there's a tiny hole next to it. Weird. And this one. Very strange. Oh, fuel cell. That's for the fuel cell. Oh yeah, that's for the fuel cell, because that's up here. And then the motor sits back here. Awesome. I'm getting excited. We're going to get the motor mount in here. That's going to be fun. Oh. Slowly and evenly apply force until it does one snap, not two. Two snaps is all the way through. And then your thumb gets smashed like that. And that hurts. And it leaves a bruise. And then you know not to do it next time. Okay? I can't tell what's right thread and what's reverse thread. And that's also annoying. And I put the eyelets in there. You know what? We're going to do this the backwards way. Is this the best way of doing this? No. But is it effective? Yes. Is it wrong if it works? All right, so shoulder screw and a nut, and it's going to go on here. Okay? So shoulder screw and a nut. I don't think we even need our 5.5, so I think the bottom of the steering rack has... Yes, it does. So one thing we do know, though, is that we can put a 5.5 on this to get the thing started. We did our acorn on the right on those, so let's do the acorn on the right on these so that they're all the same. So acorn side is the right thread, right? Is that what it was, or is the acorn side the reverse thread? I don't remember now. Do you? Is the right thread. Get our 2.5 on here so that it's ready to rock. So I can find which side is it. There it is. And then you're supposed to use some thread lock on this too. So make sure you got your thread lock. Okay, grab your 3x10, your 2 mil, drop a thread lock. We're going to go through the middle hole. Hold that screw in there. Use your head for leverage. And then screw it on just like this, okay? Actually, to be honest, I wasn't trying to keep it on camera so you could see. I'd probably just drop it off the end of the desk and do it that way, but I'm trying to keep it to where you can see it, okay? So I'm using my head. for more than a hat rack. For a car rack, too. See? All right. And then this one, I show you what I mean, though, by dropping off the counter, because it's going to be a lot easier to show you this. Or to do this. That way. Okay, so thread lock. Screw. Rod end. 2.5. Ta-da! And you're going to do the same over here. All right. They were more like 1.5 degrees of toe out. That's centered, right? Yeah. About 1.5 degrees of toe out. I pinched my finger in there, too. Get myself a blood blister. Yeah, a tiny one, but still. That hurt. All right. So those are attached. Bag G is done. Nope, bag G is not done. What is this? Oh, that's just the attachment of the, we already did that. That's the attachment of this guy here. We already did that. So bag G is done. Bag H and get it set up. All right, and hopefully you didn't cut your fuel line just yet. This is silicone fuel line. As you can see, it's a little bit stretchy. This actually makes a good tourniquet band too if you have a really bad injury at the track, if you have fuel line laying around. We're not going to be putting this on just yet, so you can go ahead and just curl this up and set it to the side. May actually be getting some bright colored fuel line to run in this. So I'm going to grab our fuel cell, and it looks like here somewhere we've got our feet on. One's tight, one's a little loose, but we have our feet on nonetheless. There's our fuel line loops. And I'm not sure what it's wanting me to do with this. Because it's showing it over here somewhere, but there's nothing to screw to. Oh, when the volume of the tank system is over 125 cc, using this part can reduce 2 cc of your fuel tank. So this screws down inside. So there's actually a screw down inside of there that mounts into, and this is a volume reduction. And that takes so a 3x10, 106002. All right, so this we're not going to use right now. This does have a clunk in it. You can hear it in there. Clunk is this guy right here. It's like a filter screen that's down in there, and that way when you're upside down, it clunks to the top and keeps getting fuel to the motor. Just loops through here like so and snaps in place, and then has our small screw in it, right? Or 2.5 by 5, yes. So this is a 1.5 millimeter driver. So there's our pull. So when you pull in for fuel stop, just like that. This is your exhaust port line, so this pushes pressure into the tank, and then this is your fuel out line. So your clunk picks up right here and feeds it out, and then the exhaust pressure pushes it to the carburetor. And then your carburetor then burns it, pushes it out the exhaust port, which the exhaust comes out this way, and the pressure from the exhaust pushes in here as well and keeps the feed going. So that's why these have to be started with a roto start, and then, or not a roto start, a bump box, and then it turns the flywheel and fires it up, and it's good to go. Next is our deflector screen. So this is in case you spill fuel, it doesn't go all over your electronics. Deflector screen is going to go like so. There's the 2 holes here. Okay. And it's going to be which countersunks? I know it's countersunk. Which ones? 8 mils. The 10 mils are for fastening it to the chassis. Okay. So 8 mils. It's already got the feet on, so I don't have to worry about putting those screws in. And then this is in step 44. It mounts right there. Looks like these are actually turned around backwards. So the back side should go with the pin on the inside, and the front side, which is the one I just cranked down. I I'll loosen this up for adjustments. And then, where did I put my, here it is. And then the front side is the one that goes this way. Okay, so like that. And like that. Should be lined up now. Yes, they are. You can tell it's lined up when you can see your pins in the hole. You can still see your hole where your screw goes in. All right, so now we're gonna move this to the side and we're gonna bring out the old Beautimus here. Here is how this works. So, you have your brass sleeve right here. Okay, get your clutch bell. You have your bearings, your shim. You have this little screw right here. And then you have that guy right there. This little screw goes in the end to hold this on. And this goes on here, and that's what tightens down this behind this. Okay, so it goes like that, and then this goes in there, and this goes over top, and this goes in there to help hold it all together. Capiche? Go ahead and open bag eye. All right, so now that we've got everything open, you can see here we have our factory clutch bell that is a 13 tooth. The one that comes with our Ultimate is also a 13 tooth. So we're good there. The hanger that comes with the Ultimate is a lot nicer, and so I'm going to use it. And then the bearings that come with the Ultimate is way nicer than these, so I'm going to use those. So these are just standbys. Same with this. This is a 4-shoe, nice lightened clutch. This won't wear out as fast because it's got the slot in there to keep the heat down. Plus, this is vented more than the factory one is too. The factory flywheel here is a solid piece. This one you can see is a little more milled, so it lets the heat out. And the shoes are nice, but it's only a 3-shoe. So once you get those in there, it's just not a whole lot. I also don't have a clutch spring tool, and it's a lot easier to do this if you have a clutch spring tool, because you put this on, and then your stuff goes in here. Your springs push on this in here like so. Here, I just show you. So the springs go through here. See, the long side faces the front, and then it goes all the way through the shaft like that. And then this goes in here, but once they're all in, they're going to push over on this. And it can be a pain in the butt to get them in there like that, which is why I like these ones where it's all encased in one unit. And it's much nicer. Yes, you could argue when you replace stuff, you can replace the shoes on this, and on this one it's easier. And you have to replace the entire unit. I would rather pay the extra, and I'm not kidding you when I say this, $5 to $7 to buy the whole unit than to replace clutch shoes. The amount of times I have stuck these stupid springs through my thumbs. I quit buying make-it-your-own flywheels years ago. Literally years ago. I think it was like 2015 was the last time I touched a make-your-own clutch. I would much rather just say, here's the whole thing, and then go on. Good to go. These things suck. So these are going to go like that. I just stuck it in my finger, and all I did was touch it. So these are going to go in a bag because I don't even want to deal with them. The brass sleeve that it comes with, brass sleeves are pretty much all the same size. So it's good to hang on to these because these do start to lose their pinch over time. But yeah, we're going to all these things back in here. We need to grab our socket heads and our lock washers. So that's these ones that have the little splice in them. And that little splice actually locks down on whatever it is it's putting onto. And it helps hold things from backing out. To back out to keep it from backing out without using thread locker. So there's those in there. And then these are going to mount with the flat side on the inside and the nice etched outside on the outside, just like so. So as you can see, one side is higher than the other. It's because it kind of sits in there at a sideways angle. One thing we can go ahead and do before we put it on is we can go ahead and put these on if you'd like. So the brass bushing is going to go on here. Looks like it's wanting us to do that first anyway. Now, as you see, it won't go all the way down. That's because this is pressure fit. So once it's pressure fit, it'll actually squeeze this down onto there, okay? So you can get it to kind of go a little bit if you kind of finagle with it a little bit and whatnot. And then there we go. Then this is going to go on, okay? And then this goes down in there. And this is when you need this guy, because I believe this is a 10 mil. Which sides are 10? That's not a 10. It's not that. It's an 8. So I do have an 8mm wrench. My Sticky Kicks one is an 8. So you just crank her down on there. Now it is nice to have a flywheel key that you can actually stick in here. Otherwise you got to hang on to her tight. Don't even try to rotate this over by hand because there's so much compression in this, you will not be able to get it to rotate over by hand, okay? Without that glow plug out, and even with the glow plug out, it's tight. Just line up the holes. Make sure that was in. Start them with your fingers. It looks like to actually properly put this motor on, you have to take the cooling head off of it, because it doesn't have any holes on the outside of it. There's no holes on the outside of it to put a wrench through. But these are 2.5s, and I've got a 2.5 ball end, so I'll just use that. I don't like using ball ends, but since this doesn't have thread lock on it, we don't have to like crank her down. It does have, however, these lock washers. So when we go to take it off, we may have to take the head off of it to get these screws out. Getting it on will be much easier than getting it off. If you don't have one of these already, just hop onto BRAAAAAP and order a already made flywheel assembly. Thank me later. The tiny holes all in your thumbs from those stupid springs will thank me later. Okay? Okay. Eye head screws, that's these big flat guys here. And those are going to be what mounts your motor to the chassis. Okay, so you set your motor on there. All right, so you got your motor sitting on there. You're going to look from the bottom. You're going to have not those two small holes lined up, but the two large holes right there. And then these are probably 2 mils. Some kits, these are 3 mil. Some kits, these are 2 mil. They're almost always a 4mm screw. It's just the head differences between brands. Now, if you're wondering how tight to make these, you're literally going to make them just almost tight and then back off just a tick. You may be thinking, why am I doing that? Why am I not tightening it down? I mean, it's a nitro motor. Do I want it all the way tight? You do. But first, you want it to be able to move, okay? The reason you want it to be able to move is because you need to set your gear mesh. I just threw my microphone on the floor. What was I saying? Oh yeah, you need to be able to set your gear mesh. So just like on an e-car, you can't have your motor too tight. So you need to be able to move it out. That's about going to be perfect right there. So we're going to tighten it up with it, not all the way to the edge, but just a little bit off. Just a slight bit of tick. Perfect. Exactly what you want, just like on an electric car. The only difference is you have a big nitro motor that you're setting the mesh on and not an electric motor. See? Now that's in there and you can hold this and you got that nice little tick there. Hello and welcome back. Well, for you it's just a few seconds later. For me it's a couple days later actually. So we're going to go ahead and get to these shocks and get them completed. So let's go ahead and open bag K, get it spread out on our table, and then we will get into this one. As you can see with many of our videos with shocks, we've got everything laid out. This is going to be quite different than our 10 scale shocks just because it seems like there's more things here. So we're going to try to figure out what is what together. Yeah, we've got like these thick squared O-rings, and then we have our normal round O-rings. So one of these I'm guessing goes around the collar and one goes inside of here, but I'm not sure which one is which. And then we have bladders, but we have emulsion caps that have a hole inside of them. So I'm confused. You can't use an emulsion shock with a bladder at the same time. Oh, are these for if you're doing emulsion? So these are either or. I'm going to go ahead and try the bladder just because these honeycomb bladders are cool looking. And then if I don't like them, I can always just go to an emulsion shock, it looks like, because I've got the seal here. I think that's what that's for then. I think we figured out the mystery. It only took 10 minutes of staring at this, plus the 28 it took me to spread it all out and actually get it looking nice for the camera. If that's the case, then these larger red O-rings are for inside of our collars. Okay, these do go in here, but the reason it feels like that they're too big is because they actually snap into place. And so that makes them difficult to do. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to build one shock, and then you're going to build the rest on your own. Okay, so we're going to build one rear shock. So we have a collar, we have a cap with the bladder in it, we have our body, we have shock shaft. You want the little side up, okay? Washer down, just like that. Piston, you want the donut to face down. Nut, which is 5.5, I'm guessing, or is it a 5? It's a 5. Shock pliers to make sure you can get that snug, because it does have a lock nut on top of it. Okay, I'll make sure that that lock nut is on there good. We're going to do the body portion. Now, I am out of paper towel, and the stores are out of everything because of that snowstorm last week. So we're going to use this. We need our white O-ring grease, 2 O-rings. Okay, just like so. There we go. Now we're going to do just like on tint scale shocks. We grab the little top hat shaped one first. It looks like that. It's going to go in little side facing down. You're going to use your 1.5 to push it down in there. The reason you're going to use your 1.5 is you're going to need it for your bleeder screw in your cap anyway. You can see that goes on here like so. And since we're not running emulsion, we can just go ahead and put this in here because we're going to actually bleed it with the cap itself and not the bleeder screw, because you can't bleed a bladder. All right, so O-ring, and then our flat one right here, and then an O-ring, and then our lower hat one with the little narrow point facing out. Your small O-ring is going to go around this, or your smaller black O-ring is going to go around that. Then your bottom cap is going to go on. Okay, just like so. Here's where it's going to get a little different than your 10 scale shocks when it comes to putting this together. Everything is the same for the most part, with the exception of this next step. So we grab our stuff like normal. And just like on the others, we're going to do this. But here's where the next step gets interesting. You're going to put it through like you normally do, right? But before we put the eyelet on, we have to put our cover on. So if you notice, there's a lip around this right here. You may be wondering, what is that lip for? That lip is actually where the top of this is going to set. So this, you're going to hold your shaft just a little bit to keep it from moving and get that up on there. You're going to work the sleeve around the lower cap. If you're wondering what this is for, this is called a shock boot. What do boots do? They keep your feet clean, right? This is essentially the same thing, except for it's for your shocks. So then you're going to pull your boot up. Grab your shock shaft. Put your, let's grab the ones back here. Put your rod end in. Okay. This is supposed to be a 45mm stroke, so we're going to try that. Getting ready to go to the races tonight, and I had a lot of this stuff already packed up. So, we're at 45. Perfect. So basically, as soon as the threads go away, you're at 45. Now, as you can see, that is in place. Go ahead and grab your shock pliers again. Gonna drop the ball in there, pivot ball, pop it into place. Hope you don't pop it all the way through. Okay, and there's that. Now we're gonna put our fluid in. And these are big shock bodies, so you're going to take a lot. We're basically going to go ahead and top it off, because when we put that underneath, remember there's that little spot underneath there where there's going to be air. So when we pull this back down, we should be just a little bit down. Actually going to put a little bit more in there. This is where you're going to want to grab your paper towel, or in my case, extra Kleenex, because I'm out of paper towel. All right, you're going to put your cap on. Now remember, these are bladder caps. So bladder caps, you just leave it a little loose, just enough threads that it's on, okay? And that hole over here, this is your bleeder. So you're going to push it up like so. If you got too much, it'll bleed out. Like that. And once it's down, it's sealed. And then I'm going to crack it open. About 2 or 3 threads, just enough for that bleeder to show. And you're going to push it up. And you're going to bleed out the excess and then tighten her down real quick. If you can keep your hand from slipping. And that is how you bleed a bladder shock. It's much messier than bleeding an emulsion shock, because you can't just put something under there to collect it. It actually just squirts around. So then, we've already got shock fluid all over this, so we should be okay to go ahead and get our collar on. You may have to work it a little bit to get past the O-ring. That's trying to go crooked. I will say 8 scales are usually more finicky with this, because the O-ring is a lot thicker, and so it wants to grab a lot. You needed something to hang on to besides the top of the collar there. All right. It doesn't tell us where the collars need to be at on this, unlike the 10 scale ones. It tells us how far the collars need to be down. We're just going to go 3 threads showing, and we'll start there. All right, and then we put our spring on. Push our boot up so we don't tear it. Slide that over, and it'll have a notch that slides it down into, okay? And there's that. And actually where we put that at is perfect, because that gives, nope, it does have a little bit of a gap there, okay. So there is 8 threads showing. There is 1 spring done. So you're gonna go ahead and do all 4. And once you have all 4 done, we'll get them mounted. All right, so we're back. We got our shocks built. So now we're gonna go ahead and grab our buggy and start getting things mounted up. All right, so as you can tell, we haven't done our throttle linkage yet because we have no servo sitting in here. So until we get the servos, our throttle linkage is going to wait. Same with our pipe. There's no pipe yet because the pipe is on back order, and I wanna make sure I'm running the same pipe as this. So let's go ahead and start getting our shocks in place. It looks like it wants us to do the rear shocks first, which are gonna be, rears are the long standoffs, front are the short standoff, okay? So our fronts are going to use the short standoffs, and then 2 of these screws, and then our rear is going to use 2 of these screws as well, these shorter ones. And then each one is going to get 2 of these conical washers. And what do they want them in? They want them in second to outside, so we're going to start where they say to put them. Because why not? Can't hurt, right? All right, so your front one is going to require the screw put into the washer like so. We're going to use the second hole in from the top. So you're going to hold that in there and then start to screw that on right like so. Put a little bit of pressure on it. You can just screw that down and then grab your wrench. I'm using a 2.5 ball ended so that I can get the angle around the fuel cell. And then you're going to snug that up and then do the same on the other side. So screw washer standoff, second hole from the outside. And then on the rear, you're going to do the same, except for it's going to be reversed. Standoffs are going to be facing the back side of the vehicle and not the front side of the vehicle. And then are they in the same hole as well? Yes, second down from the top. And then what we are going to do is we're going to do the front shocks first. So on the lower side, we need the clockwise and counterclockwise screws. So that is one black and one silver. Silver one is your counterclockwise. So clockwise on the right side of the car, counterclockwise on the left side of the car. And those are going to be with our 5.5 nut driver. Our top screws are going to get thread lock, and then those are going to be put in with a 2mm wrench. And that is these little conical shaped guys here. I always do the bottoms first, just out of habit. And since we're up here, I'm going to go to the outside hole. I think they probably say the inside hole, but I'm going to do the outside one. Now you can use your 5.5 nut driver like this, or there is a small Allen head in the middle of it as well. In both of them. It's like a 2mm Allen head. I always prefer using the 5.5 nut driver just because it tends to hold a little bit better. Alright, and then you want your little plastic clippy guy here. You want the plastic clip to face the front. So drop a little thread lock on there, and same deal. One conical head screw. Now we're going to move to the rear and get our rears done. We're going to put the clockwise on the right side and the counterclockwise on the left. There's our shocks in place. We still have some very long screws left over. It says traditional screw assembly. Well, what did I just do then? Oh, so traditional assembly is not using these, but using the long screws with the nuts at the end. All right, we're not going to do the fuel line yet or the filter. I'm going to leave the cap on here because for right now, I don't want anything potentially getting into the motor until it's ready to go. So it's just going to sit like it is for right now. We are going to go ahead and put the rear wing on, which is with this package right here. The small screws are going to be for adding the gurney, which is this guy right here for extra downforce. It goes on like so. It goes on like that. Okay, that's where that goes. And then it says do not use these marking holes here. Go 0.5 millimeter in from them, and then that will get you the good spot. So that's what we're going to do. On mine, all I did was I used the crosshatch that was within the circle just a little bit over towards the middle. And then we can go ahead and get this installed wherever Exacto is at. Get our wing buttons out, our gurney screws, and these little ones are 1.5s, and I'm going to use my bit on these. So this will be getting replaced with the rear wing from Leadfinger because I don't run the kit wings. And you're going to set your wing on top of here and put that socket head screw through your wing button and set it down in there, and it'll screw into that nut that we tucked into there back in way earlier. So grab your 2.5 millimeter driver. Hope you can get that lined up with that nut. It's down in there. If the nut doesn't want to line up, that's when you grab your 1.5 and see if you can get it lined up. There it goes. And then just tighten her down. Alright, so for us right now, the last thing that we're going to do is the pipe and all the stuff that needs to be done once we get servos, pipe, and that whatnot. So, now we put this on here like we normally have it, and let her sit and look pretty, because that's how she's going to sit on the shelf right now, but we've got her done. Until next time, keep the shiny side up, the rubber side down, and remember to stay in the groove.